Pittsburgh has had many names over the years. It was Fort Duquesne, then Fort Pitt, the Smoky City, the Steel City, City of Champions. For the native Algonquin inhabitants of the region, they had a term in their native tongue. It was Chondaroga, meaning land between the rivers. Now, that piece of land that we call the Point today, where the Allegheny and the Monongahela come together, this area for about a decade in the mid 18th century would be the most hotly contested piece of real estate in North America. The fate of the original inhabitants, two important European empires, and also the future of a new nation would all be wrapped up in this point of land. And the fate of Guyasuta and his fellow Seneca Mingos would ultimately be decided by this struggle.
Hey Dorseyville, we're here in Sharpsburg in front of the Guyasuta statue, and I'm here with former Dorseyville teacher Mr. Goggin and current teacher Mr. Lepaka, and we're going to talk a little bit about who this guy was.
Now, long before Columbus even discovered the New World, native cultures were firmly established in what's now the Pittsburgh area. What historians call the mound builders lived along the network of rivers, which included the Ohio, the Youghiogheny, the Monongahela, the Allegheny, from the Great Lakes region through the Mississippi River Basin all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. These villages were united by trade networks. Eventually, this mound builder culture disappeared and other groups migrated into the area. In the 1700s, bands of Delaware, Shawnee, and Seneca moved into the Pittsburgh region. The Seneca were part of the Iroquois Confederacy, or what native peoples refer to as the Six Nations. The Seneca who settled in this particular area were known as Mingos. And Chief Guyasuta, who you're going to learn about very soon, was a part of this tribe. The Mingos, or Seneca, were part of what anthropologists call the woodland Indian culture. They were hunters, they were fishermen, gatherers, but most importantly, they were farmers. They would burn the forest to clear fields, and then they would plant their crops. Now, the Seneca lived in longhouses, just what that sounds like, 100 feet or more, bark structures with separate compartments for families. An entire clan might live in a single longhouse. Women had a pretty good degree of social and political power in this society. It's what anthropologists call a matriarchal society. Women had a voice in council, and they participated and helped make very important tribal decisions. Now, in general, the woodland Indians lived within the balance of nature, and their limited numbers kept their impact on the environment fairly light. But this would change dramatically, though, with the coming of the fur trade. One of the most interesting aspects of the Seneca culture was its political structure. 6 nations, 6 tribes united in a confederacy to minimize conflict amongst themselves, to provide mutual protection, and the power to negotiate with European empires. For centuries, before the founding of the Founding Fathers created the U.S. Constitution, these native peoples had a federal system of government that was very similar to the one that we have in the United States today. Mr. Lepaka, the statue of Guyasuta here in Guyasuta Square in Sharpsburg, it's a mass of marble and metal, but there's a complex story that's buried there. And there's many different sides to this kind of symbolism. Now, Guyasuta, if we look at him in regards to the British, he's an ally. For certain other rival Native American tribes, he's an enemy. For the American colonists, he could be seen as a murderous enemy. And for his own people, a hero. So I think you have to consider that when you look at symbols such as these statues. What are your thoughts?
I say without question. I mean, we've got a complicated individual, as most great people are. And like you said, I mean, it's all from your perspective. You know, I mean, obviously there's a statue of him, okay? But some people might say, hey, he was trying to take out Western Pennsylvanians. He was trying to get inside Fort Pitt. But you talk to his people, you talk to any of the native people in the area, you're talking about people who are, hey, we're trying to keep our way of life. You know, we're not the bad guys. If they weren't on our land, we wouldn't be doing this. And how that kind of compares with George Washington's story. You know, I mean, you have George Washington. He's a person that many Americans view as the ultimate American, as the father of his country. But to the natives, he was trying to take their land. And he was kind of at the point of taking the point, our homes, and making it British.
You just heard Mr. Goggin talk about the importance of the eastern woodland tribes in western Pennsylvania. You heard him talk about the importance of this area that we call home today. And that's kind of where the story picks up. And we're going to talk further today about a chief named Guyasuta and his importance in our area, his importance in our school district. You know, this isn't just a guy who was from western PA. This is a guy who very well was from our school district. Right here, okay? Sharpsburg, Aspinwall, right in this neck of the woods. So Mr. Goggin left off talking about two world powers eyeing up western Pennsylvania today. And yes, in the 1730s, 1740s, 1750s, Great Britain and France looked at western Pennsylvania with very big eyes. They saw the three rivers. They saw the vast woodlands. They saw the potential for farmland. They saw the furs that were in abundance in the woods. And they were like, we got to get that. We got to get that. Oh, well, there are some Native Americans here, but we'll deal with them. We'll deal with them. And if you were a Native American, you're thinking, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. France, Britain, this is our land. We've been here for hundreds of years. We haven't bothered you. So why are you here carving up our land? And Guyasuta definitely had that perspective. He saw the encroachment on the three rivers, on his people, in our school district, and he was alarmed. So Guyasuta, who was born in the 1720s, we think, so he was around 30 years old when this conflict that will eventually start in this area called the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, will begin. He at first considered helping out the British. And actually, when a young George Washington was sent to this area, he decided to ally with George Washington. And George's mission given to him by the governor of Virginia for the British, there was no United States yet, there was no Americans yet. George Washington was sent to northwestern Pennsylvania to tell the French, hey, get out. We don't want to hurt you, but if we got to, we will. So Guyasuta actually was one of the guides who leads young George Washington, only in 21 years of age, to northwest Pennsylvania, to a French fort called Fort Le Boeuf. And he leads George Washington there. George Washington, with much respect, much hat tipping, said to the French, hey, you got to get out. And the French said with also much respect, no, we're not going to get out. Sorry. So Guyasuta leads Washington back down towards western Pennsylvania. Eventually, George has to cross the half-frozen Allegheny, very close to where we sit right now. And George very nearly died doing that in December 1753. He falls into the half-frozen Allegheny. His guide basically takes him out of the river. Eventually, they build a fire and saves George's life. I mean, just think, if young George Washington would have died in this river, would there be United States? Would we have ever even fought for our freedom? Would we have ever won our freedom? Would you and me be here today? I don't know. Okay, so Guyasuta decides to ally with the French. And in 1755, a massive British army comes with a mission to capture a French fort built at the point where the rivers come together in Pittsburgh today, called Fort Duquesne. I mean, how many things in our city are named for Duquesne today? Well, that was the fort built at the point. The army was led by a British general named General Braddock. And there's things named Braddock in this city as well. General Braddock and a young George Washington and well over 1,000 men are approaching Fort Duquesne. They expect to take it out, no problem. They're the British Army, maybe the best in the world. But about 10 miles from Fort Duquesne, near Kennywood Amusement Park today, Guyasuta and a bunch of Native Americans and some French soldiers are going to run headlong into Braddock's army. A vicious battle will be fought. The most vicious battle ever fought in Western Pennsylvania. And General Braddock will be killed. George Washington will have bits of his clothing shot off, his hat shot off, horses shot from under him. He will not be hurt, thankfully for our future. But Guyasuta and the French and Native Americans destroy Braddock's force. And it looks like Fort Duquesne is always going to stay French. The next year, another British force led by a guy named General Grant, not the future U.S. president. Guyasuta's men will defeat General Grant, and Fort Duquesne again is safe. And it looks like the French are here to stay. And maybe the Native Americans are here to stay. Guyasuta. But eventually, another British force is sent, led by a guy named General John Forbes. How many things are named from Forbes in this area? Forbes Field, Forbes Avenue, Forbes Hospital. And this time, they were too strong. This time, the French abandoned Fort Duquesne, they blow it up, and the natives, they're forced to fall back. Guyasuta has to abandon this area for a while. And the British build Fort Pitt at the point. And the British have control of this area for the next few years. Eventually, the British are going to win the French and Indian War. Eventually, they're going to claim this area for Britain. The Native Americans, led by Guyasuta, they're holding on, but the British have momentum. Now, when the French are gone, the British couldn't care less about the native people. Not at all. They disrespect them totally. No more gifts. No more need to take care of them because the French are gone. We don't need them anymore. So they are very disrespectful to Guyasuta, to all of the tribes in the eastern woodlands. And for a while, they roll with the punches. But then a couple chiefs say, no more. One was Guyasuta. The other was an Ottawa chief who lived in the area today called Michigan, named Pontiac. And Pontiac and Guyasuta, who were not together, had a similar idea. We need to rise up right now, so they will launch a series of unbelievably deadly raids on a dozen British forts in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania today. Many forts were taken out. Many garrisons of the fort were killed. And frankly, I'm telling you right now, if you lived in the Fox Chapel area school district in 1763 during Pontiac and Guyasuta's rebellion, you probably would be killed. People were not spared. Men, women, and children would have been killed. The only hope you would have living in the Fox Chapel school district was to get to Fort Pitt. Fort Pitt was surrounded by Guyasuta's men. Your only hope of surviving in the Fox Chapel school district was to get your family to Fort Pitt before it was surrounded by Guyasuta's forces. They wanted to capture Fort Pitt. They wanted to save their land for their people. And it looked like they were going to take out Fort Pitt. But a relief column was headed towards Fort Pitt, led by a British officer named Bouquet. And there's some things in our city named for Bouquet. And Bouquet was taking a force to try to save Fort Pitt from being taken out by Guyasuta's men, from starving to death because they were surrounded. And Guyasuta's men will try to ambush the British leader Bouquet's forces before they get to Fort Pitt. A collision took place near an area east of Pittsburgh called Bushy Run. And the Battle of Bushy Run begins between Guyasuta and the British Army. Unlike Braddock's defeat, unlike Grant's defeat, at Bushy Run, Henry Bouquet's forces are going to defeat Guyasuta's men. They're going to kill several of Guyasuta's biggest sub-chiefs, and they are going to push aside Guyasuta. They're going to get to Fort Pitt with bags of flour. They're going to feed the survivors, and Fort Pitt will from here on out be British. Guyasuta's people will be driven from western Pennsylvania. Fast forward 10 years, a new war will be fought. Americans, this growing divide between British colonists in North America, called Americans, and the British Crown will erupt. The American Revolution, the fight for independence, will start. Native Americans have another choice. Who do we help in this war? Do we help the new burgeoning Americans, or do we go with the British, the stronger of the two forces? Guyasuta and his people are being back and forth. They decide to help the British against the Americans. The British said, we're going to give you your own land if you help us. The Americans said no such thing. So Guyasuta will fight at a brutal battle in New York called Oriskany, which he and his people will be defeated. And through a variety of events, the Iroquois, the Eastern Woodlands people, will be defeated with the British in the American Revolution. And from that point on, any hope of the native people like Guyasuta's people holding on to land in Western PA will end. We don't know for sure when Guyasuta dies. He will eventually try to form a bond with the new United States. We believe he dies in the 1790s during the presidency of our first president, George Washington, who he knew when he was 21 years of age. Guyasuta, as an old man, will make some peace with the Americans, at least for a while. He dies in the mid-1790s. Where he is buried, we don't know. Some say he's buried in the Sharpsburg area, in the Fox Chapel School District, where we call home. Others say maybe he is buried up near the Kinzua Reservoir in what is today Warren County in northern Pennsylvania. We'll probably never know. But what we do know is Guyasuta, not from Western PA, but from our school district, tried to hold on to his land, was not totally successful, but has had an imprint on our culture ever since. Look at how many things are named for Guyasuta, for Washington, for Braddock, for Forbes, for Duquesne. How many things in our area center around this time period? And Guyasuta is a big part of that.